into asking you how you felt about Brock Purdy's game if you were going to grade it. I won't expand on it until I hear your answer, but I think I would give him a B, potentially a B minus, depending on how much you want to grade that pick six. But I felt like a B was a pretty good um, landing spot for my answer. But I would love to hear your grade and just how you thought about his overall performance, and then maybe I can adjust my grading system depending on what you say and how convincing you are.
Yeah, but no, I'd like to hear what you also have to say. You don't have to adjust based on what I have to say. I'm a little more pessimistic in this one. I'll probably give him a C plus,
Okay, I
somewhere in the
like
C to
it.
C plus range. The reason being, I thought Brock had a couple of really good throws, and I thought you talk about the rhythm, right? 49ers
Yes.
had struggled to begin games before. I thought Brock had a really solid first drive, just getting the ball to where it needed to be. A lot of short throws, but throws that were important. You had one to McCaffrey, you had one to Charlie Warner, and then he had one, I believe, to Debo Samuel. And those were like the main throws kind of on that drive. Starts the game off, I believe, 3 for 3, ends up being 5 for 6 in the first two drives. So it was a pretty solid, start for Brock Purdy, but there were a couple of recurring issues that I noticed. The main one being it seemed he had a little more happy feet than normal. What do I mean by that? I thought there were cleaner pockets that I believe it counted 4 times that he had stepped up into looking to take off as a runner rather than waiting for the progressions to kind of materialize in the passing game. And perhaps they were quick reads that, after they're done, you can't really get something done. But I would have liked him to stay in the pocket for those specific plays. I thought that those kind of led to some imbalance with the offense and also led to some issues offensively in that regard where you could have had potentially some better plays down the field or at in some area in the passing game. That was one thing that I noticed. I believe I counted it 4 times. The other one, I mean, there was this stretch right in the third quarter where Brock didn't have
Overthrows.
the best game. You talk about that first throw prior to the interception. I mean, it's just a miss. I believe it was to Debo or to Juwan Jennings, just a miss. And then the second
Debo.
throw, obviously, yeah, second throw, it's tipped at the line of scrimmage, which is unfortunate, but you don't want an interception there. I thought that those kind of two stretches were not great overall. For Brock, I mean, I think that he had some really solid throws. The big one was the one to Ayuk. I thought that one was a beauty, and that single-handedly elevates the grade. But because of some of the issues and also because of the way this game went, where the 49ers, it seemed like were more run heavy in this one, trying to kind of impose their physicality on the ground and also with a variety of short passes, that's where my grade kind of goes for average for Brock Purdy.
Okay, I like that. I think maybe our grading systems are just a little bit different because I feel that like I really agree with everything you said. I think when I think of like a very average to above average, but not like at all elite, like you're not carrying the team at all, but in my opinion, you're also not like completely messing it up. I'm
Mhm.
like I feel like in my head that's like a B minus performance. Um where I think for you that's like a C. And where I struggled was I felt like cuz he was 21 of 30, had 209 yards, one touchdown, one interception. Now I did feel like he could have gotten more interceptions, but like in or he could have gotten more touchdowns, but in instances where like Christian McCaffrey was doing so well in the run game, he was instead of Brock Purdy throwing it to him, he was leaning forward and getting in. So it did feel like the like when I was when we were talking about game balls, I didn't think of Brock Purdy at all, especially my instant reaction when I was talking about players that stood out to me. Brock Purdy didn't come up, and it wasn't because he didn't, or it wasn't because he did poorly. It was just because the players that had stood out, and comparing Brock Purdy to himself in other games, I feel like he's performed much better where he was the player that stood out. Where this one, I felt like he was much more kind of a cog in the machine, distributing the football, not making too many mistakes. Obviously, the pick six wasn't obviously that's a horrible play. It's like the worst play that the worst thing that can happen for any quarterback. But it did feel like for most of the game he had everything flowing in the sticks. You're right. There was the few overthrows during that lull that was kind of like, okay, Brock Purdy, settle down. I have kind of noticed, I feel like after an interception, I don't think so far I haven't noticed that Brock Purdy has that same like goldfish brain that Jimmy Garoppolo had, where you felt like he could throw an interception and then like legitimately a touchdown on the next play. So far for this team, now luckily they just have been throwing way less interceptions, but when they do throw an interception, I feel like there's a couple plays, or a drive or two where not just Brock Purdy, but the offense as a whole kind of seems flustered. I don't know if it's like Kyle Shanahan kind of gets scared, so maybe he tries to call the game differently or take the ball out of Purdy's hands. But there was definitely a section where I felt like Brock Purdy was a little bit more shaky. But when I look at his game overall, I would say 75 to 85% of the game, he was just kind of smooth sailing, not doing anything stellar, but not doing anything negative. And then like I kind of even that out by being like, then he did like the worst possible thing, but then he also threw the touchdown at the very end. And when earlier during the low streaks, when I was being much harsher on him, I was saying a lot of that is because I grade the play at the end of the game more harshly. So if you throw an interception, but then at the very end of the game, you're throwing the game winning touchdown or the game sealing, solidifying touchdown, I'm going to put
Right.
more emphasis on that. So that was kind of how I got to the B minus B section.
No, I mean that's a good breakdown, and I mean, again, all of these grades and things like that are always going to be fluctuating different people between different scales and things like that.
Not mine.
Like the
Mine are
reason,
always correct and never. I never,
like the reasoning,
never.
but no, I like the reasoning that you pointed out.
Thank you. Sorry about that. That's just a joke because I am the most easily.
Easily
I don't know if like
persuaded person.
manipulative. Yeah. What's the thing? Everyone says it when you're in like middle school. Gullible. I'm like gullible. Like they're like, oh, you should look up gullible in the dictionary. Like that was I said earlier. I picked the finals. Like I said 13 to 31, and then I was
Uh
listening
huh.
to Jose, and he like completely talked me out of it. I was like, yeah, you're right. That was such a bad. I don't even know why I said that. And then they
Such a
did it, and I
terrible
was like,
pick that it ended up being right. Yeah.
um, okay. And then I thought this would be like a interesting thing to ask you because I've heard